Esselamun Aleyküm. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri. Vahdud uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. We will continue with the 17th word. Last week we completed a supplication which occurred to me in Persian. And inshallah we will continue with the section coming after that. There is no title. In my book this is 228.
So in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. But when it said, he said, I love not those that said. It made me weep, the verse, I love not those that said, which was uttered by Abraham, peace be upon him, and announces the universe's passing and death. The eyes of my heart wept at it, pouring out bitter teardrops. Each teardrop was sorely sad as the eyes of my heart wept. The verse causes others to weep, and as though weeps itself. The following lines in Persian are my teardrops. They are a sort of commentary on some words present within the divine word of God's wise one, the Prophet Muhammad. A love who is hidden through setting is not beautiful, for those doomed to decline cannot be truly beautiful. They may not love with the heart, which is created for eternal love, and is the mirror of the eternally besought one, and should not be loved with it. A desired one who is doomed to be lost on setting, such a one is not worthy of the heart's attachment, the mind's preoccupation. He may not be the object of desires. He is not worthy of being regretted with the sorrow and grief that follows. So why should the heart worship such a one and not be bound to him? One soul who is lost in ephemerality. I do not want such a one, for I am ephemeral. I do not want who is thus. What should I do? A worshipped one who is buried in death, I shall not call him. I shall not seek refuge with him, for I am infinitely needy and impotent. One who is impotent can find no cure for my boundless ills. He can spread no salve on my eternal wounds. How can one who cannot save himself from death be an object of worship? Indeed, the reason which is obsessed with externals cries out despairingly at seeing the deaths of the things it worships in the universe, and the spirit, which seeks for an eternal beloved, utters the cry, I love not those that said. I do not want separation. I do not desire separation. I cannot abide separation. Meetings followed immediately by separation are not worth sorrow and grief. They are not worthy of being longed for. For just as the passing of pleasure is pain, imagining the passing of a pleasure is also pain. The works of all the metaphorical lovers, that is, the works of poetry on love, are all cries at the pain arising from imagining this passing. If you were to constrain the spirit of all the works of poetry, from each would flow these grievous cries. Thus, it is due to the pain and tribulation of those meetings stained with transitoriness, those sorrowful, metaphorical loves, that my heart weeps and cries through the weeping of, I love not those that say. I first didn't understand what was meaning with the set, but okay, I understand like setting the sun, those that disappear, right?
Yes. Well, maybe we can start with the story of the Abraham that alluded here. Do you want to give the story, Yusuf? Is your expertise kind of storytelling? Storytelling, yes.
So, this one, Abraham was searching for who is the maker, and then he first looked at a star and said, this must be my maker. But then when the star set, he said, this cannot be my maker. Then he looked at moon and he said, this might be my maker. Then again moon set, and eventually the sun rise and he said, this is big, so this must be my maker, my sustainer. And when the sun sets, Abraham said, no, I do not like those that set. It cannot be my maker, my sustainer. Then he said, now I turn my face to the maker of the heavens and the earth. So this is how his journey starts. So this is where those phrase, I love not those that set, is in the Quran.
Thank you. Then you can continue.
I just, maybe it's an irrelevant comment, but I just realized that, so Abraham has two stories, right? One, the story with breaking the idols and putting the X on the biggest one. And that's one story. The other story is this journey that he's going through. I just realized there is a difference between the two. Like in this one, it seems like it's more like an emotional. So even though like when he says, oh, like son must be my creator, it doesn't sound like so much like an intellectual process that he's going through. It's rather more emotional attachment with the beings around him. But in the other story,
do you want to remind us the story? At least
you go ahead, you know the details of the story.
So in the other story, then Abraham at this story already found his Lord, so he is now trying to make his people question. And his people at that time were idolaters. So people were worshipping idols, so idols were gathered in a certain place. So what he did was he break all the idols, only left the large one, and put the eggs. Let's assume he made this. In the story, he just leaves the idol intact, just to, I guess, make it more image graphic. We also say that he put the eggs to his neck. But then, when people come back and they saw that the idols were all knocked down, they said, "Who did this to our gods?" Then one of them said, "There was a boy who was messing up with your gods. Ask him, maybe he knows." Then they asked Ibrahim, "Do you know who made this to our God?" He says, "Ask to the large one, because it's intact. All the rest is broken. The big one is not touched." And apparently, it must be, he's implying that it must be the doer of this action. Then the verse says they turned back to themselves. So this is how the story goes. And they said, "You are really Valim." So wrongdoers to yourself. So the consciousness kicks in within the people. But then they turn back and say that, "Ibrahim, you know that those idols cannot do that." So he says, you know that, now Ibrahim says, "You know that they cannot give harm. How do you expect that?" No, they say those idols cannot even speak. How come that they are going to break the idols, like the idolater says? Then Ibrahim says, "Then how come that you are thinking that they provide you, although they cannot give harm or speak?" So in there, this is the crux of the story. Then they throw him into the fire. This is how it goes. They say, "Okay, throw him into the fire and save your gods." Actually, it was ironic in there. They are saving their gods by punishing the guy who break the idols. So, although it was supposed to be the other way around.
So in that story, to me, it's like there is a challenge to the reason of the people and kind of pushing the people to reason and break that causal relationship and understand that like the causes are not related like doors of the effects. But here talks about love. I love those that said. It is not really like challenging so much the intellect or the logic or the reason of human being. It's rather like bringing your emotional side out to the like surface and like putting into the equation, or like that's what the process is. Like so, for example, he doesn't say like, "Oh, okay, I consider the moon and the sun like, but since they cannot help themselves, so they cannot be God." That's not what he's saying. He says like, since they disappeared, and I don't like it, so they cannot be the source. I don't know if it really matters like for anything, but I don't know, it just occurred to me that like, it is more like an emotional process rather than intellectual process.
And the way that Mursi is interpreting it within the first sentence that he says, this verse announces the universe's passing and death. So as if in Abraham's case, he is first considering the star, then the moon, then the sun. But in all of them setting, so the main problem is, now you make the extrapolation, everything, even the strongest things out there is setting or dying. So death is a big issue in the universe. So it looks like this was the problem that triggered Abraham. So everything is dying, I am dying, and I don't like dying or the things that die. This doesn't really, it's like a burning fire in me. Death is so much of a central problem, and I'm looking for some sort of a solution for my problem of death, but everywhere is filled with death. So the things that I am trying to find an answer to my question, they themselves are also dying. And I don't like, in the first place, I don't like the fact that I am dying, and I'm kind of trying to find answers or seeking help from the things that they themselves are also dying. So it's not no help. It's not no help.
So I just remember that, like, I think it was C.S. Lewis. He was like atheist before, then he becomes a practicing Christian. And his reason being atheist is the death. And he talks about in a way that, like, everything is just designed so perfectly, like well ordered in the universe. But within that well order, everything produces death. So for him, that was a contradiction. How is that possible? So there must be no God, because there's an apparent contradiction. Everything is so well ordered, but at the same time there is death, like that you cannot get away from it. It seems like it is relatively here also the same exact situation. That's what everybody is experiencing. But, and Quran also using the very same argument, but one produces like, belief, the other approach produces rejection of the Creator. That's another interesting point. Why is that so?
I guess it also goes back to our previous discussion, which was starting with, isn't the problem enough for you as the solution? What was the exact wording for that?
Are your ills not sufficient as cure for you?
Yeah. So the problem itself, the solution is hidden behind the problem itself. So if I do not ask what is behind the problem, and I got stuck with the problem itself, I say that this is a problem. But the problem was given to me, so that I'm going to look for what is beyond the problem. Therefore, I had some problem, and I was afflicted with another problem, so that I'm going to dig there and see what is under it. The solution to the problem was going to become apparent to me if I dig the problem itself. So this is why if I do not do the digging, then the problem itself becomes cause of my unbelief. But if I dig it, this is where again I'm going to find the belief. So in the same place.
So there must be something within us that triggers us to take one approach over others.
Like what?
That's what I'm questioning. I don't know.
At this level. So he's not even talking about belief or unbelief. He's just describing from his perspective, describing the human nature. Like it says, I don't like the water.
I was more referring to the verse itself, but when it says, he said, I love that those that said, right? So if Quran is the speech of your Creator, obviously Creator knows you better than anyone else. So, and when he speaks to you in that manner, obviously he speaks for a reason. So he brings that very essential part of your experience, and he must bring that for a reason. So to teach you about himself. That's the reason why I took belief versus
I see.
because that author, when I read him in 3-4 pages, he described the universe in a way that at the end this is the case, and that's why I cannot believe in God. It's because this is big torture and contradiction for me. So it's because like out of the pain, technically that's why it was out of the pain of separation or death, or thinking of separation and death, that he came to a point that conclusion that there must not be a God. But Quran brings up the exact same experience, but in a completely different, opposite direction, that teaching you who you are, what you are, and what those experiences are. What is the purpose of those experiences are.
I guess for this author you referred, I might be wrong, but to me it seems like it doesn't matter whether he rejects or accepts. Because I guess the real point there, the important point, that he's after something.
He was looking for something.
Yes, he was looking for something. He was trying to understand the universe. He was trying to understand, first and foremost, his own experiences. At the end, he ended up with a conclusion, which, at least to me, like, doesn't make sense maybe, but doesn't matter. He was looking for something, and he chose something, and through the same, I guess, the journey, and then he started become a practicing Christian, right? That was the start. So I guess it really doesn't matter, like, what stations you take. As long as you are on the road, you are on the journey, I guess this is what most matters.
I mean, you are, as long as you are in search of something?
Yes. So he was not just saying, oh, who cares about the God or what is the God? He was looking for something.
I guess like the question would be like, when we ask ourselves, like, do we find in the position that so we can say the same thing like Abraham did, like I love but not, I don't love those that sin. Like, do we find in that situation?
I guess this is the bigger question, more important question. Are we really looking for something? Are we trying to match what is inside us with what is outside? Or do we see the imbalance between them? Because the entire text that we read, it talks about the imbalance. That I want something eternal, but nothing seems to be eternal. So there's an imbalance. And this tension probably driving Abraham, looking for things. But again, maybe I'm just simplifying things to the extent that it shouldn't be.
It's making weak.
So after he talks about the universe's passing and death, he says a beloved one who is hidden through setting is not beautiful. For those doomed to decline cannot be truly beautiful. They may not love with the heart, which is created for eternal love, and is the mirror of the eternally besought one, and shouldn't be loved with it. So, what is truth in this? Because when I read it, at least like what comes to mind, I find most of the things beautiful. So why he says that the things that die or doomed to decline cannot be beautiful? Like in what sense? And he even says they cannot be loved by heart. So I'm sure you guys, you love your wives, right? So what he's talking about?
It's not about just for the married people, this is for everyone. So you can relate.
Loves chicken, for example.
Who loves chicken?
Yeah, he.
Okay, so like, think of it, your relationship with the chicken that you love. Can you really like when you think about your own nature, with an open mind, can you really truly love something that you know that there is some sort of deficiency with it, and those deficiencies, those shortcomings, wouldn't those bother you?
So, if with love, we are referring to some emotional state accompanied by some physiological states, then I guess we find ourselves frequently in such states, like we love things. But while I was thinking about my past loves, let's say, like chicken or a good soup, I guess one constant characteristic is they are temporal. Like even if I think that I'm in immense love with well-cooked food, just after, let's say, a few years, it disappears and I don't even care anymore. And with a clear mind, even in the state itself, like while living it, yes, I can easily say that probably after a few years,
I would say this after the wife example.
Say it again, sorry?
The wife example, it wasn't very wise of you.
With wives, I guess it's more than a few years. Let's say till we go to the grave, but still it has a temporal side.
I don't know. I mean, why do you even think of decline as deficiency? Sometimes you love things because they decline. Like, you would be bored of things if they would be same, like perfect all the time. So you even like the decline in some things. I mean, you wouldn't. What is your favorite season? Do you have a favorite season of the year?
Okay.
So, would you like to live in autumn for like 12 months a year?
Probably not. Probably not.
But there are also like many things, I don't know, like, I mean, you change first of all, so like, obviously, like, with you, things also change. Like, you like older versions of things. Like, when you're a when you're a teenager, you like wanting girls like energy and, like, you want them to be like full of life. But then when you're 60, you don't want that, you want something else, right? So the same one that is declining is more appropriate to you.
Okay.
So I wouldn't call decline deficiency. That's my point. Necessarily.
I guess you, at least partly, you gave my answer. You gave me an answer. Because with your example, like, you don't want to live in autumn forever. Because you cannot love autumn forever. So, autumn, for some reason, cannot fulfill your needs. Like, it cannot provide you the joy constantly, continuously. So, I guess the way you put it, when you say that sometimes we love them because they decline, I guess the real interpretation of it is, even if we love something, it doesn't stay forever.
Why do you love something? Because you enjoy it.
Yes.
But your enjoyment does not last.
Exactly.
So your enjoyment disappears after some time. Although, let's assume there is a beautiful picture, and the picture doesn't change, and it stays still. But when you first saw it, you enjoyed it, but then you get used to it. So your enjoyment decayed over time.
And if you look from, let's say, a naturalistic perspective, and attribute your enjoyment to the picture or autumn, that means this source of enjoyment, which is autumn or picture, dies over time. Because the enjoyment is not there anymore. And if the picture is the source of my enjoyment, right, then picture cannot give me enjoyment forever.
I think the way that I understand why your nature, why man's nature, we are coded, and this is not something you can change yourself like with your own will. That's how you are wired. We are coded in a way that we love the beauty and the perfection. Period.
That's this oversimplification. Like I think because it changes all the time. Like it's such a fluid thing.
What changes all the time?
Our perception of beauty. Like one thing that we'll consider beautiful.
Whatever you may consider beautiful may change it, but what never changes is your love for the beauty. Whatever you may define what the beauty is.
Okay.
And whatever you may define what the perfection is may change from time to time or individual to individual. But something that never changes, that we have those faculties, that's how we are. We are always seek the beauty, we are always seek the perfection. But together with this, everything is constantly renewed and changed, and the things that you like or you love, in the course of time, because of that change, they decay. They change the state to a point, like another point that you don't necessarily feel the same way about those things anymore. And they may be replaced with something else, but this is the continuous process that is taking place.
That is true. I mean, I agree.
One thing never changes is your relationship with them, that you have that intense, like,
so that I agree. I know.
Emotion about things.
I think that's the natural thing. I just don't like. I just don't think it's deficiency. That's my point. I think we are because if you call it deficiency, you wouldn't like just because it decays. You should not like yourself, which sounds weird. I think you are decaying. You are.
Yeah, you yourself decaying as well. Yeah.
So you should not like yourself, which is a little bit weird to not like yourself over time. Like, you get older, I got even more decay.
I guess you can say you don't like the fact that you are decaying. Like you spending billions of dollars to solve the so-called problem of aging. Right? I mean, regardless of who you are, like layman walking on the street or I don't know, scientists, they are always, or we are always, after solving this decaying problem.
That's the thing, like, on the physical side we are, but most of the time the things we enjoy we really don't care. Like things you don't like, the cartoons that you like anymore. I think, for physical appearance I agree, many people would agree, but when it comes to the books that you like the books that I liked 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I hate them now. Like, I'm like, how did I even read them?
I guess that's the point of the author, exactly, because he says, I'm trying to combine what Osmond said and what you said.
Especially Osmond now?
Oh, yeah. What I understand from Osmond, he's saying that we have this immense capacity seeking for the beauty. The things to be loved.
In every sense.
Yeah. And what you are saying, that it tries things over the years, and it always changes. Like what he chooses always changes. Like the movies, books, right? And the author says, this is because these books or movies or anything you love, they cannot fulfill your needs. To some extent, you have the relationship, but it decays.
Actually, like, another thing is, just to add to what you said, all those like books or cartoons or whatever, like the things that you like constantly changes, and something that you like before you don't like anymore, and then tomorrow you will find something else. It's still because of your like needs for the perfection and the love. And as you are going through the things, you find out that actually nothing really satisfies those needs. And I think this is also the verse like pointing to making that point that from moon, but in the story, from the moon to the like stars to the sun, so you constantly move on to something else. Look for something that will, I'm gonna say eternally satisfy, but like that may have a connotation. That will satisfy that need in a way that you will seek no more. There is no such thing. That's not man's reality.
There's this more maybe practical example. Let's say the love for children or the love for mother, let's say. And it's not like my mother is getting old, so I hate her, sort of a thing. I mean, since she's decaying, my love is also decaying. This is not how it is. But the thing that, let's say, when even your mother dies, now you start feeling the fire of this disappeared love. This is what really burns you. And if this is the ultimate end of my mom and my relation with my mom, then I really hate my love to her because now it became a source of torture for me. And her death became a torture for me in this case. It's not, I mean, this doesn't mean that I don't love my mother after she dies or she gets old. But this love itself, the love for something that is decaying, became a source of my torture. And this is the case for anything that I love. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to end loving it at some point. But since this getting old, or more practically speaking, getting separated from the thing that I love at some point, let it be the taste of a chicken, let it be my interaction with my mom. Once I get separated from that, I start burning, and I hate that. So this is what I think I don't love those that sets might be, because it looks like my heart is not proper for this sort of a love. It is this is the case for animals, for human. We just smell something, and if it smells bad, we say this is poisonous. I shouldn't be eating that. It's not proper for my making. And I guess this is a similar approach in here. I love something, and at the end, I am getting pain out of that. So I say this is not proper for this love. My love, since having this love interaction with it, I'm getting into trouble. So there's something wrong with that. It's not proper for my love. Like the other way around, it's not proper for my tasting. It's not proper for my eating. So I guess in here, it's not proper for me to love. And
for my heart.
My heart.
Yeah. A desired one who is doomed to be lost on something, such a one is not worthy of the heart's attachment, the mind's preoccupation. He may not be the object of desires. He is not worthy of being regret with the sorrow and grief that follows. So why should the heart worship such a one and be bound to him? So there seems to be a jump here. It says, the one who said is not worthy of heart's attachment, mind's preoccupation, not worthy of being regret with the sorrow and grief that follows. And then he says, he is not worthy of worship. Why should the heart worship such a one and be bound to him? So what does he mean with worship here?
What's the jump?
So if you take the worship as, worshipping a god, like praying and prostrating, and it says the one who says not worthy of love, okay, I agree, so you shouldn't worship him. Where does worship come from?
Yeah. What's worship?
Yes, so what does it mean here? What does he mean with worship here?
As if there's a transition from love with heart to worship.
Yes.
As he's equating the two.
Yeah. or at least making a connection between them. Right? It doesn't have to be that they are equal, the same. So what should we understand from why should the heart worship such a one and be bound to him?
Because he sees it like a practice.
Sorry?
Because he sees it like something that we do when we kind of like don't pay too much attention to something and put much more value in it. And instead of if you don't focus on your experiences and see the transitoriness and you blindly love the thing, that can be a replacement for you guys, like for something more than just enjoyment.
So you mean this kind of attachment to transient things naturally leads to worshipping them?
I see sometimes, that's at least something that I see, that like if worship means that learn to the point of not denying its false sides and blindly following whatever someone does, like, your favorite politician. And if you don't accept, he's clearly doing something stupid. And if you don't accept it, probably it means that you've been over attached to him. You didn't see that he's a human with plenty of possible mistakes. You saw your meaning, like you feel some emptiness in you, some gap in you. And then you became blind. And I really see, this is something that I see, I don't know, too much outside. This is came before your car. This came before your suits. your shoes. Stop the exam.
I see.
If we reverse engineer the problem, so I was loving something, and because the thing that I love is at some point disappearing, and I was getting pain out of this separation, I was getting pain, which means this love itself will only be satisfied with something that would be eternal, which means going to stay with me. Because whenever I use it the other way around, I always fail.
Instead of saying going to stay with me, can we say that going to satisfy me?
Yeah. Okay. But either the thing itself will disappear or I disappear. So in any ways, this love is not proper to be directed towards anything that is transitory, which means love is only for the eternal one. This is why I guess he is now equating or strongly correlating the love with worship, because it is sort of an attachment which is only worthy for the eternal one. Your attachment to eternal one, which is worship, but now I am doing it to worldly or transitory things.
What is the essence of the worship?
I remember there was a hadith. Was it previously Jewish Sahaba, like followers, asked Prophet about an ayah saying, do not worship your ancestors or the people who gave them orders, like hahams in their priest or something. I don't remember the exact details, I'm sorry for that, but they say, but Prophet, we never worship them. And he says, but would you do whatever they say? And they say, yes, we would do. And would you not do whatever they not to do, tell you not to do? They say, yes, we would. Then you were worshipping them. I guess, I don't know, like after what one guy said, seems to me that like the gist of the worshipping, like making, or as Yusuf was saying, making an attachment to the thing that it's not worthy of. Making an attachment and letting it or him or her control you, let's say.
So, I think we are so used to the physical form of worship, and then when we encounter with the subject like that, probably the first thing comes to our mind, which is like the physical practical aspect of it. But that's just the physical reflection of something that should be deeper than that. And since the subject here is love and the heart is at the center, so what is the worship of the heart? For example, when we pray going to the sajda is the worship of the body. What is the worship of the heart?
And I guess he's kind of relating this worship of heart, because yes, he says, why should the heart worship such a one? He's making the relation between worship and the heart's attachment, or being bound.
So I guess we are thinking that there's something missing in me, and the thing that I love is going to complete me, or satisfy my need in that. This is why, as long as the thing keeps satisfying me, I would like to stay attached to this one. And whenever the satisfaction disappears, either we get separated. Like, for example, you said for the food, after 2 years, once your satisfaction disappears, you detach yourself. But sometimes, like the case of your mother, your satisfaction with your mother's love continues, but then life stops for one of the other, so she is getting separated from you, then still there's this detachment is from there, but we continue this, let's say, attachment as long as we feel like we are being satisfied from it. And I guess being satisfied from it means I am lacking, so that I am in need of the other one to satisfy me, to complete me. So in a sense, worship means I am needy, declaring that I am needy, and my neediness is going to be satisfied by you.
So with every attachment, even maybe with every action of ours, we declare our needs. And then, like I eat food, I declare my need, my hunger, and ask food to satisfy it. Then it becomes, in such a state of mind, it becomes a worship of the food, worshipping to food.
Because you might be taking the food as your sustainer.
That's another thing actually, like I think man is created in a nature that like no matter what, that's again, you are wired that way. No matter what, you are gonna worship to something. Whether it should be a cow, or it should be the banana, or it should be the flower.
Or yourself, your ego.
Or your ego, or your ancestors, your father and mother. You are gonna, that, because since you are wired that way, you are gonna like attribute to those to something. I think that's where actually the revelation comes to tell you that, okay, this is who you are, and this is the true object of the worship where you should direct all your worships to. It's not, there is no such thing like, for example, I wasn't like a believer before, so I wasn't worshiping at all. Now, like, I became a believer, and I am worshiping God. I don't think that's how the process works. You may not be a believer before, but you still worship something or someone, or an idea, or an ideology, or some sort of imaginary something that you created in your mind. And the religion or revelation comes and teaches you what those qualities that you are given and how they should be used or employed to make the connection with the maker of the qualities.
One soul who is lost in
ephemerality.
I don't want such a one For I am ephemeral, I do not want who is thus. What should I do? So, should I understand this part as I have some problems, I have some needs that I want them to be fulfilled, and I see that I cannot fulfill them myself. I try and I fail. And I realize that I cannot do it because I'm ephemeral. Right way to say it? I am ephemeral. Not, I guess, only one aspect that, I'm going to die, but also all my qualities, they are also ephemeral. They are limited. They will decay. They are being decayed. Like my mind, my intellect, even the emotions. Right? Most of the time, they cannot satisfy me anymore. My memory, decay. So, I try to fulfill through my qualities, or like the previous chapter, the part that we read, we're looking at different directions to ourselves, our past, our future, our ancestors, the people who will come after us. And we cannot find any solution there. And then we tried it with others as well, but as long as we realize that they are in the same nature as we are, they cannot also satisfy them. So what I understand from here is because the claim is big, it says, for I am ephemeral, I do not want who is thus. Like he is rejecting anyone or anything which is same nature as myself. It's not like, oh, maybe Osman can do it. Okay, Wangel was not able to, but maybe Osman, I can try with Osman. Or I couldn't, satisfy with sun, but maybe moon. Or maybe some other ideology. So it says, as long as they refer to something ephemeral, you have no luck. So what you are after is not same kind as you. It is something in a different nature.
So justice.
Sorry?
For example, can seek justice.
Can we seek justice?
Yeah, for example, that's not like that doesn't have to die. I don't know.
So if you're talking about like an idea of justice or a concept of justice, I guess this is what we are after all the time. And what he says, as far as I understand, if you try to fulfill this need of justice in you with what you have, like a good state, or maybe if we can establish a good state, a government, maybe it will satisfy. Right? Maybe we should vote for, some political order. He says no, it's not possible. Because whatever you do there, whatever the outcome of it, fruit of it, it will be just like you. It will not satisfy your seek of justice. At least this is what I understand from it.
From within this part, probably not.
I don't know. I mean, this is just a summary of, yes. When he says, I am ephemeral, I do not want one who is thus. Because you can apply it to everything, like your justice example, I guess it's a nice one.
Like anything else, justice in this creation is also very relative. Since anything is relative in that sense, cannot then answer for it like the need that looks for a permanent solution.
And in this sentence, he is also, I guess, now coming to the root cause of the problem, because I was getting separated from the things themselves. Because generally the option that we take is, if I get fed up with tasting this one, then I will try something new. The world is vast. I can try something new. There's always a new food out there which is going to satisfy me in a sense.
It sounds like a conversion. The world is vast.
But he is now saying, no, eventually I am the one that is ephemeral, and as much as the things are departing from me, I am also departing from the things. And as long as I am as I am, the problem is a ill-posed problem. It's never going to get solved. So this is why there must be something that's going to be eternal, which will satisfy me. Otherwise, trying something more is not, it's just pushing the problem away. But even when the pushing the problem away, the problem is always there, and I know deep inside, I know that the problem is there. Even right after I get detached from the joy itself, it reminds me of that ultimately I'm going to get separated from that. When I read this sort of things, I just go back to my freshman year in college. This was the first time I was getting separated from home. And when I say getting separated from home, in my setup, it was a big deal. Because I haven't even stayed in my grandparents' house for 1 week up to this point. So I was always at home until the end of high school. And when I went to Ankara for the university, of course, the same is valid for the family. They don't want to get separated from me as much as I don't want to get separated from them. So every 4th week, I was back at home from Ankara by bus. So I have 2 days for the weekend. 1 day was on the road. The other day I was at home. So for the 8 hours, 24 hours is for the road. Anyways, I was hating this travel because I was taking 24 hours round trip journey, but it was only for 24 hours being together. It was joyful for the 24 hours.
Minus sleeping hours.
Yes. I mean, it was that bad. But after this, being together with them, so it was certainly joy to be together with the family for that much. But when I was leaving home back to Ankara, it was the worst feeling on earth. I was saying that was this separation. The joy of getting together does not compensate for the pain that I'm experiencing with the detachment. So ultimately, I was hating this journey. Not because the journey is bad or getting together was bad, but the separation was there, which was much, much more stronger than getting together. I guess this is what I love not those that said means. This doesn't mean that it was not good. It was good. Being together was good. But it was pretty much like this bird cage or bird trap. There's some food in the bird trap and it's food. It's edible. It's something good. But once you eat it, just the trap keeps you in. So you hate traps and it is like trap.
So you came to Philadelphia to make sure that you cannot go everywhere.
Yes.
That's another story. Don't talk about please.
That was the main motive behind traveling.
But yeah, I think now I can understand better why he's talking about waiting at the beginning. I guess most of the time our love to the object, say it is our mother or food, it is the cause of pain, the love itself. Bigger the love, bigger the pain, I guess. Should I continue?
So we shouldn't allow anyone?
So I guess, yeah, it goes like, as if, that conclusion. So as if he's suggesting that, then don't allow anyone. But I want to believe that no, it's not the solution. And worshipped one who is buried in death, I shall not call him. I shall not seek refuge with him. For I am infinitely needy and impotent. One who is impotent can find no cure for my boundless ills. He can spread no salve on my eternal wounds. How can one who cannot save himself from death be an object of worship? What do you understand from the first part of worship one who is buried in death? So, is he saying that do not worship your ancestors or dead people in the grave? Any clarification, please, on this part?
Anything that is subjected to change cannot maintain his own or sustain his own, like its own existence.
So even he's talking about the certainty of that for everyone. When he says, and worship one who is buried in that. So if you worship something,
Your problem is separation,
Mhm.
and you seek solace, refuge with something that will cure that problem. But the thing that you seek refuge with, they are subjected to change.
they are already that in
They are
one
going
sense.
to that. They are like they are part of that process.
Okay.
I'm broke and I need the money, and I come to you asking for like $100, but think that you're worse than like you don't even have $100. So like, would you really do that? Like, it's just against the human logic. I wouldn't come to you. I would go to one day instead because I know that you have like millions.
I believe this is referring back to the story of Abraham. So,
Mhm.
maybe you guys mentioned it.
No, the word
Actually,
is-
it's his supplication. So he was like looking to the stars, appreciating them, and considering them to be his Lord, considering them to be worshipped. And in the morning, he saw that all of them are gone. So he said that like, if something is getting lost or disappears, it cannot be my
Hmm.
Like, it doesn't deserve to be worshipped. So then again next night he saw the moon and he said the same thing for the moon. And in the morning again that's and for the other day he considered the sun as his Lord. And again the sun is also not there eternal. During the nights is considered set. So he says that like my desires, my love, my attention, and my prayers, my supplication every time should be for the one who is there for all the time, who doesn't change or who doesn't disappear, who is perfect and who is able to hear me and answer me and see me. So basically saying that whatever you put your attention or put your love, they are not there forever. If they are not like listening you, hearing you, watching over you, and no matter what, they don't deserve to be worshipped.
Another comments? And in this story, moon, star, sun, all of them are light sources. So I guess in our darkness, we see some sort of glimpses of light in some things, and it gives us hope that it's going to solve our problem with the darkness. But yeah, eventually everything sets. And in life, it's I guess applicable to anything that we see as light. Sometimes we are seeing light in in a person, in a group of people sometimes, or in a thought, in an idea. So we see glimpses of light here and there, and we cling to it saying, okay, this solves my problems. But as long as it passes by, it doesn't solve my problem. Because, I guess it would be more practical to start, of course, from the things that we get attached to. But it's not only that. Anything that even temporarily enlightens us, gives us the hope that I find sunlight. I should look if this light is, what do they say, continuous light, or it just disappears at some
Light
point.
that never dies. There's a song like that.
Light that
Never
never dies.
dies. It's a very
But it happens sometimes. No matter we are in life, sometimes we get upset. Sometimes we found ourselves in darkness.
sometimes.
So that means whatever I thought is enlightening me, it's not helping me at that point. and I don't like those darkness moments. So I guess I am in search or quest of a light which is never going to leave me in the darkness. So whatever that light is for me, I should question if it is a temporary light or a permanent light. And is it really worthy of whatever I am putting into this light?
And once you realize that the light that you seek is not coming from the moon, it's not coming from the sun, and find the real source, and then you come back again, you go back to moon and start again, and you still keep receiving your light through those objects around you, but with a mindset and understanding that your Lord, your Creator, Razak, provider, provides those needs through the immediate objects that you are in relation with. So you don't, like, you're going to the source, but there's also a way back from it, so you don't completely detach yourself from the rest of the being. It's just like what your mindset is gonna be. So, like, the reason why I mentioned that the individual things, like when you see them as a source and cure for your problems, the individual beings becomes like a torture because they don't hear you, they don't know you, they cannot do anything. But once you understand there is a real source who can actually address your needs, then all those things that individually cannot do anything, it's like basically the number of the things that you are in relationship with may become a carrier for how should I say, for the light that you are looking for. They may be the intermediary light thought.
So if there would be a way to kill the death, then your problem would be resolved, right? The things are disappearing. So if there was a way to get rid of this detachment or death, it would solve the problem. So if the things that I think are disappearing, if somehow I realize that they are not really disappearing, then the problem would be resolved.
The problem is solved, and like your relationship with the being then goes to the next level.
Next level.
Which you guys haven't been to that level yet. That's why I'm having a hard time to explain it to you.
Indeed, the reason which is obsessed with externals. Very interesting. Indeed, the reason which is obsessed with externals cries out despairingly at seeing the depth of the things it worships in the universe, and the spirit which seeks for an eternal beloved. Again, and the spirit which seeks for an eternal beloved utters the cry, I love not those that sent. The first part is really interesting. Please help me understand. Indeed, the reason which is obsessed with externals cries out at seeing the depth of things it worships in the universe.
You know what's the original word?
Zahire müftela olan akıl.
I don't know how Zahir exactly translates.
Oh, with external, then it's like how they look like,
Yeah,
or
like does it mean that like
Zahir, yeah, exactly. Appearance.
appearance? Yeah. Does it refer that like akıl or with the mind reason is superficial? Is that what he's implying here?
It sounds like.
Because like in Turkish one, that's zahire müptela olan akıl. I feel like mine is like reason is more like For example, I push this and it goes away, so like I am the one who's doing it. That is the zahir or like immediate apparent thing that I experience. So it is really superficial in a sense. I don't know. Is that what he means here?
I guess that's what he means.
I'm thinking of the verse which says, He is the one that is pre-eternal, that is post-eternal, that is Zahir, that is Batin. There is a verse which says God is the pre-eternal, post-eternal, the apparent and the hidden. So in this context, when, for example, the verse talks about this apparent and hidden, the way that I was understanding it is when I see the apparent things, let's say a tree, and the machinery in the tree, like all as being described in our biology books, this is the apparent beauty or the apparent manifestation in a tree. But then when I look at the same tree, I also do observe sustenance, knowledge, sort of the meaning of the tree itself. And this is the hidden part of the tree. So my intellect is bound to get caught with what is apparent. This is why the universities is filled with a study of the externals of the things themselves. But when it comes to what does that mean, I guess there needs to be something more than intellect, which says there must be something beyond that. Because just by looking at the relation between the DNA and the nuclei and the cell and this and that, my intellect is likely to get stuck in there. But there must be another aspect of me which says, is that all? Okay, it satisfies to some degree my intellect. But because it tells a story. But what is the moral of the story? I guess this is why intellect says, okay, now I'm explaining all this, but everything is disappearing, as you were giving the example at the very beginning of this C.S. Lewis. So he says that there's this perfect order, and my intellect really likes following the order because it really gives a complete story. But there's no moral of the story because everything just goes into trash. So, and what's the point? So this is why what I understand from this external.
I do not want separation. I do not desire separation. I cannot abide separation. Meetings followed immediately by separation are not worth sorrow and grief. They are not worthy of being longed for. For just as the passing of pleasure is pain, imagining the passing of pleasure is also a pain. The works of all the metaphorical lovers, that is, the works of poetry on love, are all cries at the pain arising from imagining this passing. If you were to constrain the spirit of all the works of poetry, from each would flow these grievous cries.
So what are the words spirit in this paragraph and before? Are they the same words? I'm curious.
In Turkish,
In Turkish, yeah, the originals. Do we know? Because I didn't understand the previous one, spirit anyway.
Let's discuss.
Because is it heart? Is it different from heart?
And the spirit which seeks for an eternal beloved utters the cry, I love those that sat. So the way I usually read the author, Nursi, is what he writes after certain words, like spirit, he kind of gives a definition in the follow, like the rest of the sentence. So the way I understand here, for instance, just in this context, of course in other writings he gives other definitions as well, but just in this context, he says, you have another part, which is not like your reason, you have another part. Let's call it spirit, doesn't matter what you call. But you have another part which seeks for eternal love.
Can you even separate it? Because most of the time the mistake that the reason makes is because heart failure. Like when I tell that the politician is doing wrong things, you blindly try to, most of the time say that, oh, but he's doing it for this good or that. So the two are deeply entangled.
I guess that's what makes you human, like as a whole. So you have all these faculties, all these, let's say, components, aspects, but just like you said, they are intermingled. But you know that when you, for instance, try to make connection with the universe or with the life with one aspect, there's always another aspect which makes another kind of connections with the universe. And what he says here, that you have one aspect that's called reason, which try to explain or which try to understand what is on the surface, how they relate to each other, like a biology, physics, mathematics, whatever. Maybe mathematics is not a good example, but anyway. But, but he says you have yet another aspect which makes another kind of connections with the universe. Let's call it as spirit, he says. The aspect which looks for the eternal beloved. The aspect which cries when things sad. I guess, again, in this context, this is the definition of spirit.
And what is the word? I mean, and the one in the next paragraph.
It's
It's always in both of them.
But in the second one, it's like şiirlerin ruhunu sıksan. So it's more metaphorical.
Yeah.
The essence of it.
Not makes sense. Like ruhunu sıksan is different from constrain the spirit. Like constrain the spirit. Like constraints limit something, not to squeeze.
Yeah, maybe that.
Okay, now it makes more sense.
From each would flow these grievous cries. Although it is metaphorical use, I guess, still it's a good use of the word spirit again here, which overlap with the previous use, because he's not talking about, let's say, the features of the language. When he refers to poetry, he's not trying to analyze how they are constructed, how they are written, and so on and so forth. He says there's an aspect of the poetry which again seek for eternal love, or which again makes a connection with the universe in the sense that he was talking at the beginning.
And actually, when you talk about poetry, poetry is more towards human heart or spirit, like feelings, instead of human intellect. Poetry is all about the feelings.
That's it. It's more about the emotions. Yeah.
He reads poems with intellect again.
He's not convinced.
Just let it go, you can't. Read the poem without thinking. Just enjoy.
Thus, it is due to the pain and tribulation of those meetings, stained with transitoriness, those sorrowful, metaphorical loves, that my heart weeps and cries through the weeping of, I love not those that sad. So through the pain and tribulation of these meetings that he knows will end. So in the previous paragraph, he also says something really interesting. Just like the separation is painful, the imagination of the separation is also painful. I guess this is important because most of the time we stuck with this process, like we know that we will get something, let's say next day, something good that we are looking for. in the same moment, we start thinking of what will happen when we lose it. This imagination of separation, I guess, it's always there.
There was even a funny story about that. So the woman was expecting a baby. Then, since before the birth, the husband went to the market to buy a bath tube for washing the baby. So he's out, and at home, the woman and her sister is at home. They're waiting. So the guy comes from the market and finds out that the two are crying. He says, "What happened?" And they start telling the story. So we started thinking about the baby is born. So he grew up. Now at age 3, he started playing in the garden. You see the garden, and you see over there, there's an axe, and the axe falls on top of his head, and he dies. This is why we started crying. So I guess this sort of thing. This is the general story. General story that's being told in, from my childhood. They say, "Ağlamaz mısın halası? Wouldn't you cry?" The sister, if this happens, wouldn't you cry? Because at the beginning of the discussion, Brother Osman sent a message to the group on WhatsApp group. He says, "Are you feeling upset when you imagine your own death?" So I guess if I die, wow, it would be so sorrow. I guess this is something that we keep thinking time to time.
So we have 7 minutes. I suggest we read at least a few more paragraphs.
Is this feeling or imagination? Is it mostly in heart or in mind? Is it like most sorrowful and painful in terms of emotions, or in terms of like what you said, imagination and thinking about that? And
To me, they goes hand by hand, like kind of they help each other. Your mind starts imagining things, and then your heart responds to this imagination. Like the mind in Yusuf's story says, "Oh, what if your child dies?" Or maybe, I don't know, another part of the human, like nafs or something else. Maybe your own shaitan, Satan tells you something. And then I guess then heart gives the response. And, "Oh, I thought my child would be with me forever. Now I realize that he's even not." And the heart starts crying. I don't know, I guess.
Your emotions, your feelings make you cry more than what you think.
I think so, yes. Because your mind, what it does, it just, play with arguments. Just take some inputs, produce some outputs, and that's what it does, I guess.
Makes calculation.
Yes.
If the child plays in there, the axe will fall on top of the head and he dies, period.
The mind is just like a simple tool. Whatever you want to get from it, it will give you. Like if you want to affirm, confirm something stupid that you want to believe, it will give you the affirmation. This will provide you with the arguments so that you reach the point that you want to reach. I can't remember where was it, but I guess this is how at least my mind works. Like some part of me like wants something, and then my mind comes to the play, makes all these calculations, right? And tells me that, "Oh yeah, this is the outcome that you want. Like you were right. Like these are the arguments if you want to use." So it can make the unbelief in his terminology, hypnosis terminology, which is impossible in its nature. Your mind can make it easily possible to show you how it is possible.
This is how we do it in the lab as well. You find something.
No, that's not true.
Now they record it.
That's not true, but continue.
We're saying, okay, it makes sense. So we come up with a story. If we find well, there was a bug in the code. Actually, the result was exactly the opposite. Okay, there are supporting ideas in the literature about this as well, so it makes sense.
I don't remember any
That's interesting.
example of this.
Last Saturday, this is somewhat related to the subject, but I think it's kind of the subject. Mind or reason, free will relationship. I don't know if you guys were in the online discussion. That was the subject that was being discussed. And it was mentioned there that really like you are responsible for your free will and free will has control over your mind. In a way that your mind collects the data and presents it to you. And you are responsible again for our mind to how to analyze the data and how you want to use it. But when it comes to the heart, emotions are there. Like you cannot really, you have no control over your emotions. You cannot say that, oh, I'm gonna feel this way one day and I'm gonna feel another next day. But because of that process, for like let's say, mind collects like data from the creation, and then you start making assumptions that it just happens by itself, like, oh, there is a spot in the future, like it must be so like that way. So you're building up your prejudice in a way, and then constantly using your mind and your free will to interpret the data in a way to cover the truth. And that's relationship with the heart is that heart is like heart or spirit always satisfied with the eternal. But your data collection and interpretation is always limited and moves to this world. So that brings a lot of tension and pain and sorrow for the heart and the spirit. As opposed to you have your other option to, instead of being superficial, which was mentioned here, Zahiri, external, reason which is obsessed with the external. So you collect the external data, are you going to ask like a deeper question to understand the reality of it?
I really think the word appearance is much more appropriate in this case.
I'm sorry?
The word appearance is, I think, much more appropriate.
Appearance.
Appearance.
So like if you use for your free will in that direction, then you find the source, you find the light, you find the guidance, which is again directly related to your heart, because then it brings peace and solace to your emotional issues.
Very clearly, you can use the same exact argument for sort of faith, right? Like if you want to believe in a creator with the same argument, you will reach the creator, he will show you faith paths. You will see that all the processes that I saw were created. There was always one person prepared food. So the same exact argument.
Yeah,
and this is what we do all the time.
That's what
when it comes to faith, even.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But still, at the center, it is your free will who is making the decision, which direction you want to go. And the mind is there to provide you the data and, in a way, analyze the data. So you can be either open and really seek for the, bringing your own emotions and your own, very existential aspect of yourself into the equation and look for the reality of the thing, or you can just choose to stay at the level of appearance, or external level, and act accordingly. So we can be biased in either way.
There will be one difference though. It will be totally off topic, but there seems to be a difference
between what and what.
In case of belief, intellect works as a using the Nursi's wording, it's going to work like a sleeper. Because in the case of belief, the use of intellect is to nullify something. Like you are saying that this cannot be God, that cannot be God.
Mm-hmm.
So you are taking something at hand and analyzing if this can be God.
Okay.
But in case of unbelief, you are trying to make up a story which says this is God. So in one case,
So what is like in the case of belief, you said it is different. Like so, like what exactly?
the use of intellect is different. I mean, in one case, you are using it to nullify some idea, saying that it doesn't make sense. But in the case of unbelief, you are trying to say that no, let's say DNA makes a living being, for example. You are trying to construct a story which is explaining the phenomenon. So the difference is
you make a assumption and then you try to
justify it.
justify it.
Yes. But in the case of belief, it's not like I want to believe, therefore I am trying to find a story that covers it up.
You can say that too, though.
You can, but it's again going to be a prejudice. But this doesn't mean that belief is equally illusionary as unbelief. It shouldn't. Because
you underline the assumption of God, though, right? I mean, in this case, you attribute some.
It will be equal if you start with the assumption of God. God exists, so let me just build on top of it.
Yes.
And it will be the same thing like DNA makes the human being having that assumption and trying to do so on top of it. So in that sense, there is no difference between the two.
Yes.
But
in the case of the model of there is no God but God, in the description of belief according to Quran, it needs to say that is this God? And you say no, it cannot be God. This is why you are using your intellect. Just to say that DNA cannot be God, sun cannot be God, moon cannot be God. You say that it doesn't work. You are not trying to come up with a story in which DNA makes something.
okay, to me, I call that like being open-minded, like for either option. Let me just see what maybe the like true approach for it.
But in this case, your intellect is not trying to come up with a cover story to what you are already accepted.
True.
But in the case of either blind belief or blind unbelief, intellect is used
It's
for
dogmatic and it is like you are building on top of your preconceived idea.
it just brings up a story, a justification for what you already accepted. But this is not the case for investigative belief. The intellect in this case is not being used for coming up with a cover story. It's not making up a justification just out of nowhere.
What I understood first with the first objection of Wanga, I see what you are going, and I agree with this difference. Maybe I got it wrong, but when Wanga said that, but it could be also the case with the belief is like quote unquote, doesn't matter, like one definition. I guess the main point there, like whatever you reach with your intellect, whether belief or not, there must be something else, right, other than your intellect, which will balance it or which will weigh it.
So in the model that I was saying, intellect doesn't take you to belief. Intellect just sweeps away unbelief.
I see. Yeah,
I
I totally agree.
This is why the place of belief is not intellect by heart, but heart. I mean, there is some aspect of you which ultimately says, I don't allow that was said. Because in the end, I'm looking for satisfaction, and it's not my intellect. But my intellect is sort of a filter man or someone who just investigates, and he says, it doesn't work. So this is why I like the wording of Musha saying that it's sleeper. So some idea is being put in front of you, and you say, no, just put it into
But
trash.
exactly, you can reach like only halfway best, like with intellect. Like there are the sayable things and there are the non-sayable things. I mean, there are many things that we cannot say that we feel with we realize, we experience, but we cannot say. So what you say actually in the like in the Orthodox theology, I don't know, it's called the via negativa approach. Like they say you cannot say, you cannot know what God is, but you can know what is not. So our patriarch has a very good, strong, good saying, which describes what I'm trying to get at. So the Orthodox patriarch says that you can't understand reality.
You can.
No, you cannot. So I'll say the Turkish, and let's try to find an accurate translation. So hakikat entelektüel olarak anlaşılmaz, hakikatin farkına varılır. It says something like that. You don't understand it, you realize it, let's say, perhaps. So, and there's at least in his eye, there's an integrity. Like, at best, the intellect can only say yes, what it is not. But when you left out what is not, there's still a huge, possibility option, a huge, series of options.
I guess most of the time it's even worse. Like you end up with no option. Which is like when you say the series of options, because I guess your intellect or your mind most of the time can sweep off almost everything, any type of thing in the universe, and you end up with nothing. But I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
But isn't the two different? Because ending up with no option is different than there are some options that I cannot speak. Because this is what I understand from what you are saying. There might be some options which it's not possible to put into the words, but still those options are out there. What you are saying is there is no other option left.
No. Okay, what I meant, I couldn't find any option in the realm that my intellect can pertain.
So for you, the option's finished in your perception.
Not necessarily, because the effect is already still there. You're looking for a cause.
Okay.
You see the effect. You cannot find the cause, but it doesn't nullify the fact that you are seeing the effect. So you say that I couldn't find it here.
Yeah, this is where you say God, right?
Yes.
Because you say that I couldn't find the options. So it's like
sounds like it reminded me the
university entrance exam.
No, Buddhist theology.
You just, it reminded me of university entrance exam. You know the wrong answers. You just eliminate them. Only one of them. There must be a right answer.
That is actually the approach of Buddhist theology.
I was trying to articulate the approach of Abraham, but if you want to call it Buddhist.
But there is one common point in all this religions.
We are going perennialist.
In there, you because as a result of your journey or your investigation, you reach to nothingness. Because nothing in this creation, that part, my interpretation of it, this last part. So nothing in this creation can be the creator. And you reach there, that you reach to the fact that there is nothing in this creation can be created. So you reach to nothingness, and they just leave it there. They don't necessarily go any further to say that then who made the creation? And that's the reason I think in their spirituality or practice or in their worship, they made the core practice is emptying your mind, so you can reach the nothingness so you can reach the peace.
This is going to take us to there, but I guess we will end up in different places most likely.
So the reason I mentioned this, when you told him that isn't that completely different? It is actually completely different.
Yes, I agree. It's what I said at the beginning, how it sounded. Yes, I agree that it's different.
Yeah, of course, I'm not saying that you meant, but the way that you put it, that reminded me. Yeah, I understand.
So we have to close the discussion officially. Please, let's do it, and then we can continue unofficially, inshallah.
officially let's read the last sentence, not
Okay,
discuss
go
it.
ahead and then close the discussion.
So if you want permanence in this transitory world, permanence comes from transitoriness. Find transience with regard to your evil commanding soul, so that you may be enduring. Which sounded like Osman Buddhist approach, but anyways, inshallah we will talk about this next week. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.